I saw that many of you appreciated my short about how the frontman would survive every game, so I decided to follow up with a video explaining this in more depth, as there was still some confusion about it. I will also discuss how Il-nam would survive every game in the second part of the video. In the first game, the frontman didn't participate, as we could see him watching the game from his chambers. This was a clever move because there were 455 other players, and, for the most part, people didn't know each other, so nobody was likely to notice his absence. However, I honestly believe that the frontman didn't want to enter the games initially. The only reason he joined was to stop and interfere with Gi-hun's plan. With Gi-hun's help and strategy, the number of deaths had drastically decreased compared to Season 1. The frontman knew he couldn't let this continue because the games wouldn't be as entertaining as before. In the Season 1 finale, we catch a glimpse of a conversation where the frontman asked Il-nam why he would risk his life by joining the games. Il-nam answered that it was much more entertaining to play the games rather than just watch them. However, I don't think the frontman's reason for joining the games was purely for fun. If it were, he would have participated in red light, green light, as Il-nam did in the first season. Moving into the second game, the frontman ensured his safety here as well. His team conveniently went last, even though his team was in the middle of the crowd. When they were discussing which members should play which game, we could see that players surrounded them on all sides, left, right, front, and back. This means they were in the center of the crowd, so their going last was clearly part of the frontman's plan to survive this game. We can see that when it is their turn to play, there's only one other team left. In this game, if the frontman's team loses and the other team wins, the guards would wait until the other team left the playing area before killing his 4 teammates, leaving him alive. Perhaps he would let Gi-hun live as well, imprisoning him and forcing him to watch the remaining games. But that is another theory. Lastly, we have the mingle game. I think this was much easier for the frontman to survive due to the chaos created when the teams were being formed. With everyone running around, he could easily separate from Gi-hun and find an empty room where he could hide and wait. We can see that when the team size was supposed to be 4, he sacrificed himself, telling Gi-hun he could find another teammate to meet the required number. Gi-hun and his friends immediately started running. When they arrived at the chamber, Gi-hun looked for the frontman but couldn't find him. It was clear that he had gone into a room alone because he wouldn't have been able to find teammates that quickly. The only difficulty for him in this game was when he chose to save Jung-bae. As soon as the team size was announced, he grabbed Jung-bae and started running, eventually entering a room with another player. At that point, he likely realized that if the timer ran out, there would be no way to kill the other 2 players without putting his own life at risk. So he immediately killed the 3rd player, ensuring it would come down to just the 2 of them. But even so, if there were 3 players in the room, I am sure the guards would have opened the door, killed the other 2 first, and the frontman would have faked his death so they could escort him out of the playing area. In conclusion, he was in no real danger, no matter what, even when he entered the room with that other player. The only reason he killed the other player was to gain Jung-bae's trust and keep him alive long enough to kill him in front of Gi-hun, breaking his spirit. If you're wondering how he would survive the special game, it would be with the help of the guards. We can see that the guards were stationed outside, waiting for confirmation to interfere and stop the players. If the frontman had been targeted, they wouldn't have waited so long. They would have intervened immediately to stop the attack. The camera has night vision and can detect thermal heat from the human body, meaning the control room staff would closely monitor the frontman and anyone approaching him. Also, I don't think anyone would have dared to go after him because of his display of power when he beat Thanos and Namgyu. There were easier targets, like the old lady. This highlights the key difference between Il-nam joining the game for fun and the frontman joining the games to stop Gi-hun. In my opinion, Il-nam was in greater danger during the special game than the frontman. Perhaps this is why he instructed the guards to interfere and end that game. Now let's quickly review how Il-nam ensured his safety during his games as well. In the first game, we can see that the doll was programmed not to scan Il-nam, allowing him to stop and move even if he was a second too late. For the Dalgona game, the four of them decided to split up, with each taking a different shape. Song-woo picked the triangle first, as he realized what the game was about. Ali chose the circle because it reminded him of the moon from his hometown. Il-nam let Gi-hun choose because he was confident he could survive the game even if he picked the hardest shape. However, Gi-hun ended up choosing that shape. Look at Sang-woo's reaction when he heard this. It's clear he knew what game was coming next and tried to persuade his friend to pick an easier shape. In this game, if Il-nam couldn't complete the challenge, he could simply wait until the time ran out. The guards would then kill everyone in the room except him. Even if he made a mistake and broke the shape, the guards would let it slide. He could keep his broken piece hidden inside the box, and no one would notice. In the special game of the first season, Il-nam was in the greatest danger because as an older man, he was an easy target. This is why the guards carefully monitored the cameras, ready to intervene if anyone came too close to him. Il-nam knew about the special game and prepared for it. When the lights went out, he immediately climbed as high as possible to prevent anyone from reaching him. Perhaps this was the reason he decided to stop the special game early. He was afraid things would spiral out of control, putting his life at risk. And now, the hardest game for Il-nam, the Tug of War. Many people believe he accepted the possibility of dying here and played the game fair and square, but I don't think that's the case. After they won, we could see that every player had a lock on their shackle, except for Il-nam. I believe his shackle wasn't locked, and if his team had lost, he could have released the rope and moved aside to avoid being dragged down with the rest of them. Additionally, we see that even after they won, the rope wasn't cut immediately. This delay suggests that a person was in control of when the rope would be cut. This is a strong indication that Il-nam had a plan. If his team had lost, he could have released the rope, and the winning team would have also fallen because the guards wouldn't have cut the rope in time. Since the platform was far above the playing field, the other players waiting their turn wouldn't have been able to see what actually happened. If both teams had fallen, they likely would have assumed it was either a tie or some kind of accident, without suspecting that Il-nam had survived. As for the marble game, no explanation is really needed, as we clearly saw how he ensured his survival. The reason he chose that game to quit was because he knew the glass bridge game was next, and there was no way to guarantee his safety in that game without exposing his true identity. So in conclusion, neither of them were in any real danger while playing those games.